In today's video, we're going to be talking all about counteroffers. Do you need them? What's the strategy around them? And how to write them? A small part of this will be Florida specific because that's where I am, but the vast majority of this is going to be just kind of general concepts and things to think about and will apply to all 50 states. And if you don't know me, my name is Frank Kritzman. I'm a real estate team leader and coach here on the Emerald Coast of Florida. On this channel, it's my goal to make as many real estate agents successful as possible. So if that's what you're into, make sure you stick around. Before we get too deep into counteroffers, the first thing you should be asking yourself when you're thinking about writing a counter for a client is it even worth going for a counter in the first place? You want to think about the thing that they want to counter for. Is it something small? Is this something that we can maybe negotiate later during the inspection process, or even maybe just later on in the transaction in general? Maybe it's just as simple as moving a closing date by a few days, and it might not be something that's really worth writing a full counteroffer on. If there's multiple offers on the table and you submit an offer for one of your buyers, and that seller chooses to counter your offer over everyone else's, then your buyer wants to counter that counter. That is a surefire way to lose out on that deal completely. Even if there's not other offers on the table, you should be thinking about every counter is an opportunity to miss out on that deal. There's been a couple deals that I've got because first buyer submitted an offer, seller countered that offer, and that buyer countered the counter. So now that counter is sitting with the seller. And then I came in, submit my offer to the seller, and now my offer is more desirable to the seller for whatever reason, and I win that deal because that other buyer decided to go back and forth for 2-3 days with counteroffers. Definitely something you want to be aware of, and make sure your client is aware that every time you submit that counteroffer, that is an opportunity for somebody else like me to come in and sneak in and grab that deal. The other side of that coin with submitting a counteroffer is the concept of never letting a deal die, or at least doing your absolute best to never let a deal die. And here's what I mean by that. No matter what side of the transaction you're on, if you're on the listing side or you're on the buyer side, just say for this example, you're on the listing side and you have a buyer submit an offer that is maybe a lot lower than your seller would like. Obviously, your seller is not going to be super happy with that offer, but you're in a very unique situation. Right now, you have a buyer that wants to buy, a seller that wants to sell, and a property in the middle. So when I say do your best to never let a deal die, just because that first offer isn't where the seller wants it to be, make sure that it's not just a no and then both parties walk away. Do whatever you can to either prompt a counteroffer, or if you can't get your client to do a counteroffer, try to get the other party to just send over another offer with a higher amount. Most of the time, there's going to be some sort of middle ground that both people can agree to, but if you just let somebody walk away, then everybody's really just missing out. The other thing that I see a lot of real estate agents talking about in groups, and I've had other agents complain about this on the phone to me, is they will get an offer that they feel is too low, and they are personally offended by that deal being low. And because they are offended, they won't even counter. They'll just, tell their client basically not to counter, and they will put their own ego in the middle of a deal. And because they got their feelings hurt that somebody sent over an offer that they don't like, they're now standing in the middle, stopping a deal from happening. It makes absolutely no sense, and I just do not understand how some people can let their egos get in the middle like that. So please don't let that be you. All right, now let's get into the actual nitty-gritties of counteroffers. First thing, something that I've had come up a lot is say you're getting ready to send over a counteroffer. The other thing you can do is hit up that other agent. Like if you're on the listing side, buyer agent sends you an offer and you're going to counter it. What you can say is, hey, do you want me to send this over to a counter, or do you just want to do up a fresh new contract? Sometimes, situationally dependent, it just makes more sense to have the buyer agent, maybe it's you, maybe it's the other person, just zip up a fresh contract with the new terms and just send that over, so then you don't have the counteroffers floating around. It's just a little bit less messy. But that just depends on how the other agent is and how good their communication is. So what you want to do when you're prepping that counter offer, if you're on the listing side, you want to be looking at that contract. You want to scroll all the way down to the bottom of that contract, and there's a little box that says seller counters buyer's offer or something like that. Make sure you check that box when you're prepping your counter offer, and just keep in mind the seller does not have to sign that signature block on the offer. They do have to initial all the pages so that they acknowledge that it's there, but they are not signing the offer. All you need to have a fully executed contract is their signature on the counteroffer. So that last page where the signatures are, I've had some brokers get all uppity saying that if all parties sign that first page, even with the counteroffer box checked, it looks like it could be misconstrued as everybody agreeing to the original terms on that first contract, which I totally get. So just keep in mind, as long as you're aware that all the title company needs to get it fully executed and recorded is the signatures from both parties on the counteroffer form, not necessarily required on the offer. Okay, here is the counteroffer form that you're going to be using. Make sure your counteroffer is correctly numbered. You got your seller here, your buyer here. Here is the date that the contract was signed and sent over to you. And you have the property address here. If you wanted to change the purchase price, all you would do is check this box right here and then purchase price change to whatever, or you want to change the closing date. You can add things to the purchase. You can remove things from the purchase. An example of this would be like the refrigerator or the microwave being standard things that are transferred with a purchase. You could do a counter and say, well, no, we're taking the refrigerator or something like that. Then if you need to change over any other term in the contract, just put the line number next to that particular item that you want to change, and then you just write the change on the line. Get both the buyer and the seller to sign and date, and that's it. I'm going to pull up the contract real quick so I can show you what I was talking about. If you didn't know, to the left side of the contract has each line on there, so whatever line you want to talk about on the counteroffer, you just reference this line number right here. Maybe you want the seller to designate the closing agent, so you would do line 168, box I is checked, something like that. Make sure the seller initials everything, but again, they don't need the signature. Let me just go to that last page so I can show you. We do not need a signature on this part of the contract, but we do need to make sure that that box is checked where it says seller counters buyer's offer. That is it for today. If you have any questions about counteroffers, make sure you put them in the comments below. If this video was helpful for you, make sure you press like. It really helps me out a lot. And if you're thinking about leaving your brick and mortar brokerage like I did and joining a brokerage that actually incentivizes agents to cooperate together, I'd be happy to talk to you about my transition as well. Stay classy.